Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, somebody who I've followed. He used to have a website which was much more active. His name is Wayne Madsen, Madsen. He operated the Wayne Madsen Report. A lot of that information is now on Substack, but he is a very prolific author. He's written 27 books. I thought he had written 10, but in the pre-show, you kind of learned some new stuff. 27 books. He's an investigative journalist, author, and columnist. He specializes in international affairs and intelligence matters. I got this email that promoted him from Trying Day, and you'll see the book that they promoted, which I think is relevant to today under this current administration, if you want to call it that. But you'll see the title of a book you wrote under Bush, which was very interesting era to pretty dark. I would say very dark. Now, title of that book is Overthrow, a Fascist Regime on $15 a Day, the Internet Irregulars versus the Powers That Be. So check that out. It's on Kindle. I read through it. It brought back a lot of bad memories from the Bush administration. A lot of stuff I didn't know, not forget. But some of the themes are really contemporary or current. This theme of privacy and fascism, like literal fusing of politics and business, which you're seeing just in spades under Trump. But I came to know in the pre-show, I didn't know this, but he had his most recent book that he published, which is also relevant considering these. I mean, I think we're kind of in a World War III thing that hasn't really been fully flushed out. But like, if we're at war with Iran and Russia, we're involved in something that's taking place where the superpower of the U.S. is being challenged, or it's challenging its rivals, I guess. But his most recent book is A Parade of New Sovereignties, a Post-Hegemonic World. So it has 5-star reviews. I'll put a link to that book. I'll try to pull up the title too. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot of things. But I mean, there's a lot of relevant things from this book. But anyway, Wayne, welcome to the show.
Hi, good to be with you.
Okay, cool. So for people who haven't heard your name, maybe not familiar with your extensive amount of, like, you put out tons of articles on your website back in the day. Maybe you can just acquaint the listeners to your writing career leading up to the overthrow of the fascist regime and a parade of new sovereignties.
Sure. Well, I'll take it. I'll go back to the very beginning. I wanted to be a journalist. I worked for my high school newspaper. I was the deputy editor, and I fully intended to go to college near where I lived in South Jersey, near Philly, and major in journalism. My idea was, well, maybe I could get a job with the Trenton Times or the Philadelphia Inquirer, or one of the local papers. But Nixon got rid of um, the exemptions for college age kids like me, and I decided rather than get drafted, run the risk of getting drafted in the army because Vietnam was still going on. Um, I joined the Navy, went into Navy ROTC, um, wound up at the University of Mississippi, which wasn't my idea of where I really wanted to go. But um, I graduated, was commissioned as an officer in the Navy, and spent 10 years on active duty. And I did contracting work. My last duty station was the National Security Agency at Fort Meade. Even though that's not how I started out in the Navy, that's where I wound up. Um, and Then I got involved both in the Navy and at NSA with computer security back in the early mid 80s. Um, when I left the Navy and wound up in the contracting world, I started getting requests from editors of computer oriented magazines. Hey, can you write an article? You write about computer security and privacy issues. Can you write something on this? Then all of a sudden, I found myself doing that full time. So after a 13-year or 15-year hiatus, um, I wound up back into journalism, the very thing I wanted to do, but was basically waylaid by Vietnam and other issues. And Then I started branching out into non-technical areas and started writing more and more about uh, political issues, intelligence-related issues, and um, and by I guess 1999, 2000, I found myself as a full-time journalist, um, uh, mostly freelancing. And then I started doing a lot of television work up in the DC area, even on Fox News, where I think the only reason they invited me was to have somebody they considered a liberal to beat up on. And they did a fair share of that, but I like to think I gave it to Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and a few of their other worthies there as much as they tried to give it to me. I thought tried to always stand my ground with them. Uh, the funny thing at the only White House Correspondents' Dinner I ever attended was in 2009. That was Barack Obama's first one, and I ran into Bill O'Reilly, like it was 2 or 3 years earlier. Um, I was debating him on his show on Fox. He was talking about this phony war on Christmas that never existed, and we got into it. And I saw him at the Correspondents' Dinner. I said, "Hey, Bill, I don't know if you remember me, but you're pretty tough on your show." And he he gave me a high five and he says, "Hey, it's all show business." And that told me everything. And that's all programs like his and others like it. It's all they're catering to an audience. They're not interested in providing news. And at least he admitted it.
He admitted
Um,
it without being on TV, right? Infotainment or something like that.
exactly. He admitted to me. He says, it's all Oh, he was like, hey, don't pay any attention to what I said or did. It's all entertainment.
He's
So
he's cashed out like his whole thing. He's made
yeah,
tens
they
of millions of
they
dollars.
eventually they always will cash out, and of course Sean Hannity in his case, he's become sort of a Trump, an extension of the Trump public relations machine. Um, he started out as a house painter in Santa Barbara, California, and he got a job. He volunteered to do some work for their. I guess there's a local University of California Santa Barbara campus. They had a radio station. He started working for them, and lo and behold, soon he's on the air in Huntsville, Alabama. There was a vacancy nearby in Atlanta. He goes there, and then he winds up at one of the flagship stations in New York City. Uh, and
Right.
the
He owes
rest
his
is
whole life
history.
to right wing
Oh
media.
yeah.
Like he's
Oh,
it's
yeah,
curated.
and being in Washington as long as was there, I'm semi-retired now in Florida. Um, but I got to see, the inner workings of the major networks. I did work for ABC News. I frequently was at MSNBC, uh, but a lot of times at Fox. So it's sort of like people say if you like salami, you don't want to see how it's made.
Right,
The
right.
same thing with corporate media.
When I was in DC going to law school, I was a server at a Mexican restaurant south of Capitol Hill. And I would see these guys, like the guy who's unfortunately passed away. His name was Tony Snow. I don't know if you remember him,
I knew
but
Tony Snow. Yes, he was. I saw him quite frequently at Fox. Yeah,
you would see him with like the people he was interviewing. So I'd be serving them lunch, and I'm like,
yeah.
this is the guy you're supposedly antagonizing. So for me, that's kind of seeing behind the
Was
curtain,
was
so to
that
speak.
Mexican restaurant on Mass Avenue by any
Yeah.
chance, man?
Yeah, it
I
was
think
called
I know. I've been there.
yeah, no,
Been there.
that's where I started. I would get
What
right
was the
off
name of it? I forgot the name, but I know a
something
lot of.
grill. Something grill.
Yes, yes,
It's
and
good.
it's yes, it was a good place, and there are many stories about members of Congress that used to hang out there.
I can.
one of which John Kerry used to sit at the bar drinking um, um, what the Corona, and this was back in the let me get
This
this
is
back
95
at
to 98. That's when I was there. So I think I was
okay.
working there in 96.
Yeah, Kerry used to come in the 80s when the Iran Contra thing was really big news. And Kerry wrote a report because he was chairman of the banking subcommittee. He started following a lot of that money around, with Oliver North and all the other aspects. And Kerry used to come in there and sit at the bar, drinking Crohn's. And if somebody sat next to him, he'd tell them the same story over and over again about what he discovered. Because nobody would listen to him. He actually had good information, but
Interesting.
but he would
Interesting.
repeat the story. When I heard about this Mexican restaurant where you worked, people said, "Well, yeah, we call that the Kerry place because he'd go in there almost every day and repeat the story, just people sitting at the bar." Um,
Yeah,
the
I
only,
don't think it's there anymore. It's close to Bull Feathers. Do you remember Bull Feathers? I
yes,
don't know.
absolutely, yeah. Uh, it wasn't Tortilla Coast, was it?
That might have been it. That might have been it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can
Yeah.
tell you a funny story though. There was a guy who would come in for lunch, and he would drink like two or three fingers of scotch, and you could tell he was a
Oh,
hardcore drunk because
yeah.
his nose would sweat.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
somebody said to me, he said, that guy's a congressman from Florida. And I was like, wow, he looks
Oh,
like he could be living on the corner. And so then we
yeah.
looked up his name. I can't remember it now, but like the picture of him from Florida was like this clean cut tie,
Right.
Oxford shirt, everything. And I'm like, wow, this
I
guy's a
wonder.
total
I
day
wonder if
drunk.
that. Yeah, I had encounters with a lot of members back then. And exposed a lot of them. There was a guy named Mark Foley from Florida, um, who was very good friends with Sean Hannity, and I
He was good
actually
friends with a lot of the pages too, if people don't know that story too, right?
that's right. And I'm during a commercial break at Fox. I'm on live with Sean Hannity and Foley, and during the break, I think they forgot I was actually still hooked in, and they were talking about the wonderful weekend that they had in Florida. And Hannity says, "Oh, it was so nice to meet your parents." And I'm thinking, "Oh, what uh, this." It sounded a little bit too chummy to me, and I already knew about Foley and the pages. As a matter of fact, that story led me to expose another person who was later charged with making hush payments to a guy who he had molested when the guy was a child. Well, when he was a teen. Uh, the former wrestling coach at Yorkville High School in Illinois. Uh, the guy was House Speaker Dennis Hastert, and of course he was criminally charged by the FBI, and he later resigned. Well, he was already out of office, but he was convicted and sent to prison. Yep, Tortilla Coast is unfortunately no longer in business. It's yes,
Okay.
they were
I
the
used to work
days.
there. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, they were the
It
days.
closed down over COVID, sadly. So 2021.
Oh yeah, and as you know, right near it is the Capitol Hill Club, which is adjoined to the Republican National Committee. So
Interesting.
that's one reason you see a lot of Republican members
Yeah,
hanging around that.
it says here that the Tortilla Coast was a place of Ted Cruz of all people.
Ted
Tea Party
Cruz,
meetings.
they had there was a basement there, right? They had a basement.
Yeah, they had a weird layout. You walk in, the bar was
Yeah,
to the right, and then the restaurant
yeah,
was to the left,
that's
and
right.
then it was a big thing, and it was a big restaurant. Like they served a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Well,
But
yeah, Ted Cruz conspired with a bunch of, and he was in the Senate at the time, with a bunch of Republican congressmen. Uh, I think it was uh, back when um, it was back when Obama was president. They were figuring out all kinds of ways to
to
block.
undermine him or whatever.
Yes, yes, and
It was really easy for me. I lived in Northern Virginia, so it was easy for me to take the metro, and I think you could get off like 1 block away and walk to work. So
yeah, there was a metro.
yeah,
South Capitol Street was right
yeah,
there,
that's right.
and around the corner is the Democratic National Committee
That's
headquarters, and
right. I think
of
it's
course,
right here. Like it's
yeah,
literally.
it's right there. Yeah, right there. There's a parking lot across from it, and
Yeah.
of course,
Seth Rich, right?
the
Didn't he work there?
what's that?
Seth Rich. Do you remember the story of Seth Rich?
He where yes,
He
and
worked.
he was killed actually up in an area they call uh, north of Massachusetts Avenue, which is on the other side of the Capitol building. It used to be a bad neighborhood, but it's been gentrified. But but that's where he was shot on the street about 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Still
There
kind of
were
an
no
unex.
go zones, guys. Back in the day, like you
Oh
didn't go
yeah,
past Capitol Hill. Like some of these
that's
places
right.
were very, very unfriendly towards outsiders. Is a nice way to
Yeah,
put it.
you didn't go past Eastern Market, which was the metro stop right past South Capitol Street. Um,
Right. But
but
I mean, it's just that history of so much stuff going on in DC and everything's connected and there's clubs everywhere. And
and every one
so
of those joints has a story, has many stories about it. And that I found myself writing about a lot of these locations. Um, the Bull Feathers, which is basically it's a theme about Teddy Roosevelt.
it's
Uh,
like right
that
there. So this is Tortilla Grill and Bull Feathers is right there. I wonder if I can bring it up.
Yeah, I actually toyed with running for Congress myself to represent your old residents in the 8th District, Northern Virginia. I was going to challenge an incumbent Democrat named Jim Moran,
That sounds
who
familiar.
had been mayor of Alexandria, and he pleaded nolo contendere to misuse of public funds, and he ran for Congress and won. But
So there's Bull Feathers right there, guys. This
that's
looks
Bull
nice.
Feathers, right?
I don't think it was this nice back in my day. I don't
It
remember
is
this.
it is still there. It used to be packed, and the last time I was there, uh, maybe COVID had something to do with this. I also um, the cost of living has increased. They don't get the big turnout that they used to have.
That's it. So the
Now
building's still there, Wayne. It's still there.
it's still there, yeah.
It's just not being used. It's a shame. Yeah, Bull Feathers. Tell me the Bull Feather story. These
Well,
bars have so
I
much
met
character.
yeah I met my they call them bundlers. When you're going to run for office, you have to get somebody that's going to bundle contributions because it's very expensive to run for the Congress, especially from Northern Virginia. So what uh, I was told I needed I needed $250,000 just to it was pay to play, and
Wow, yeah.
so
Even back then, that's a huge amount of money too. Gosh.
yeah, but the incumbent I was told he's got like $20 million in his war chest, so um, and more from where he got that.
Yeah, so the barriers to entry are enormous. Like it takes
Yeah,
a
and then
lot.
my bundler started telling me these are the things you're going to have to say you'll do. And I said, yeah, but I don't agree with a lot of these. He says, I'm going to go to people who are going to fund your campaign based on you doing A, B, C, D, and E. I said, even if I don't agree with those things, he says, absolutely, that's how this game is played. So,
Right.
uh, uh, I, uh, I
It's
had an exploratory committee. I had a retired federal judge on it. I had some ex-military, and when it came time to me for me to take my first check, um, I thought about it. I looked at the documents you have to submit to the Federal Election Commission. This is only for federal offices. You don't have to do this for state or local. And it's I had to account for every bit of income I had for the last, I think it was the past 10 years, even gifts, like somebody gives you, you know, $20. And if they caught you lying, uh, you go to jail, right? I mean, they call it campaign finance crime. And I said, how do the people that do this avoid that? They have professional people that do submit that paperwork for them. And I say, yeah, but nobody can account for every bit of money they've had come in over that period of time. Yeah, and that's why they hire these professionals. Usually they're accountants, but people who specialize in federal election. So it's a rigged. I hate to sound like Trump, but every time he says the system is rigged, it is rigged. It's rigged against the person that actually wants to get in there and do a decent job, and that certainly doesn't include people like Trump and his supporters. But it's a very tough thing to try to run for office, as I found out. I'm glad I did it because otherwise I would have never had those experiences. The shortcuts and you got to change your opinion on things like the Middle East, for example. I was told,
Did
look,
you
I'm
did
gonna
you
get
already have
people.
neocon? You in the book that I read through,
Yeah.
Fascism $15 a day. The neocons were active even back 20 years
Oh
ago, so they
yeah.
were still around. Huh?
Oh, the neocons, yeah. And see, the reason Moran got in trouble, where he was thought to be vulnerable, was that he was at a speaking at a town hall out in Reston, Virginia, which was part of his district. And this was during the Iraq thing with Saddam Hussein, all that. He said, "Look, the only reason we're in a war in Iraq, there are only two reasons we're there: uh, oil and Israel." Well, if he had just said oil, he would have been fine. But he said Israel. Well, he was stripped of all of his seniority. He lost his committee chairmanship. He was on chairman of one committee. I think it was the House Defense Appropriations Committee. Very, very important if you're in Northern Virginia
Right.
with all the contractors. And he was stripped of his seniority, and um, and that's why they thought he's very vulnerable. I said, yeah, but what he said about the war in Israel and oil, I said, that's the one thing I agree with him on.
Right. He's telling the
They say, but
truth.
you can't, yeah, but you can't say that. You gotta condemn him because they were say they guy my bundler said, look, I understand, I agree with you, but I'm going to go out and try to get money for your campaign from APAC. Does this sound familiar?
Yes. It's still the same, man. Like
Absolutely.
Iran. Yeah.
But now APAC is kind of losing its grip. I think with what happened in Michigan with Abdul El Sayed
I think you're
and
right.
Mamdani in New York, and I think they're
There was a couple
losing the.
more primaries, if I remember correct. Yeah. Somebody got
Yeah,
primaried out.
yeah. There's a Wisconsin tomorrow, I believe, is tomorrow, and there's a few others. Florida, we're August 18th, so we got a ways to go yet. But um,
It's really a
yeah, but
shift. It's really a remarkable shift because I think sympathies for Israel were high, over 50% up until maybe the last
yeah,
few years. Is that right? Would you
yeah,
agree with that?
yeah. I'd say so. I mean, look, it cost Jim Moran his, like I say, his seniority, and then he decided not to run again. Um,
Well,
but
from my era was a guy named McCloskey. I'm from California, and he did the same
Pete,
thing.
Pete, yeah, Pete
Yeah,
McCloskey. Yeah, he was
he's a
he
good
was
guy too.
primary.
He was a good guy.
He
Yeah,
died, yeah, and uh, very few, but
I don't think he was
I
a vicious critic either, Wayne. I don't think he was really
no,
just kind of pointed stuff out, and they're like,
right.
"Wow,"
I
and they
met a
got him.
guy.
Yeah,
There was a Republican from Illinois years ago named Paul Finley, and he wrote a book about all the members of Congress and other politicians who took on Israel. I mean, going back years, and he was defeated for his seat too, uh, and and they were basically split. Um, Democrats and Republicans. And I say all told, he must have had about 25 in that book. It was called Those Who Dared. Uh,
Is
those
it
who
Dare to
dared, those
Speak
who
Out? Dare to Speak
dared
Out?
to speak out about our
There it is.
connections and
Yeah.
support for Israel. Yeah, that's it. And
There's Cynthia McKinney. There's McCloskey right there on the cover.
yep,
I just
yep.
mentioned. Yeah.
And going back to Bill Scranton, the governor of Pennsylvania, um, who Nixon appointed as his Middle East envoy. Well, he just said a couple times. He said, "Look, we've got to be more even-handed," and that was it. He was considered presidential material at the time, and that was the end of his career. J. William Fulbright was another one, very powerful, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. People have heard about the Fulbright scholarships. That was all his doing, but he was forced out of his Senate seat.
Wow, Findlay. I've never even heard of this book. It's got memory hold or something, probably by the
Probably,
same people, right? So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
APAC is very strong, um, and I've covered APAC conferences as a journalist, and I've I know what they do. I mean, it's like it's flat out, as far as I'm concerned, it's bribery on a massive scale.
They did it for against Massey, right? So this whole thing,
Oh
$30 million,
yeah, yeah,
bunch of
Massey. Yeah,
propaganda.
that's it. Yeah, um, but I have a funny feeling that um, based on what the Israeli genocide in Gaza and what they're doing in South Lebanon, and talking us into this idiotic war in Iran, I think they've lost a lot of support, and most of it from Jewish Americans who are. I've just said that's it. Uh, of course, Netanyahu was never very popular, but uh, now you go to Israel, you don't see too many people to the left of somebody like Netanyahu, where you find an awful lot of people to the right of Netanyahu, as hard as that may uh, seem possible. Um, but uh, I think El Sayad has a very good chance of winning that seat in Michigan because he's talking issues like, well, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? He said they exist, but does Israel have a right to billions of dollars of our tax money? And that message is starting to catch on.
Yeah, no, it's really a sea change. I think they're in real trouble. I mean, for people who don't know, the whole existence of Israel is based upon their political power in the United States. There's absolutely no question about it. All the money comes from the United States. So the real
Yeah,
warfare for Israel
and,
takes place in
and,
the
and
U.S. Yeah.
that's right. And originally, the two countries in the UN that supported the creation of Israel was the United States and the Soviet Union. Um, you look at the other allied countries, the UK, they had just fought a World War II, and then these Israeli terrorists were shooting up British soldiers and blew up a hotel with a bunch of
Yeah, King
British
David,
soldiers in
right? King
King
David.
David, right? And the French, they weren't so hot on the whole thing. They had, of course, had given independence to Lebanon and Syria, and all of a sudden, there's attempts to take over some of their land um, of these newly independent countries that France still felt like we have to kind of protect them, and then the Israelis started making threats against them. So that's yeah, but that's the two countries that are mostly responsible were well, it was Harry Truman and Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Why do you know why the Soviet Union had an interest in creating the state of Israel in 48?
Yeah, the Soviet Union they looked at Israel because they had politicians who were basically very socialist and even communist oriented. One of which she was a Milwaukee school teacher who was very pro communist when she was in Milwaukee, but she uh, you know, heard about the Aliyah, the return, went to Israel, and she did quite well in politics and later became prime minister. Her name was Golda Meir.
Right. I mean, it's really she. It wasn't Golda Meir was from the U.S. too, right?
She was.
Oh,
She was a
yeah,
school teacher in Milwaukee. Yeah,
that's right.
with
Um,
very leftist politics. And so, what if you're the Soviet Union? You're saying, well, yeah, like, it looks like Israel's going to become a socialist country. Initially, they were, um, because back then, there were two branches of Zionism. There was the Zionist socialist slash communist, and then there was the other end of the spectrum, the Zionist slash fascist.
right.
And they, believe it or not, had once received the support of Adolf Hitler's Germany because they said, "Look, we want to return to the Middle East." He said, "Fine.
Go.
I,
Right.
if you
I
leave
guess the
Germany, I'm all for it." Yeah, it was called the Havara Agreement. Something else that's gone down the memory
memory
hole.
hole. Yeah. The when before Israel was declared a country, the settlements were starting to happen, and that kibbutzim network was building up, and those were all
Kibbutz,
socialized,
yeah,
socialistic.
kibbutz is in English. Kibbutz is called commune.
Right there, you go. And that you can
So
still go
kibbutz
work
is
there if
in,
you want. You know, I don't
yeah.
know. I don't think they're very friendly to Netanyahu, but
No, no.
I
They're
think that they still function.
now they're with the October 7th attack on Israel, southern Israel from Gaza. They the attack was launched on actual Israel proper land. These were some of the original kibbutzes kibbutzim going back to the earlier days. The people that lived there tended to be very liberal,
Left,
like
yeah,
that old socialist style of Zionism.
right.
And they were providing medical care across the border to people in Gaza. They were sending food over there, medicine. And so
Those are the people that Netanyahu didn't like, right?
he did not like.
They're political opponents. Yeah,
Yes, and he knew he needed a reason uh, for his war, reason to genocide Gaza. And so who did he pick? He picked those who he could basically, we can live without these people. He saw them as traitors, and so um, Mossad knew what Hamas was planning. And here's another case where Netanyahu, he never, he said, yeah, just let it happen.
yeah,
It's
Lighthawk
sort of
or
like the
whatever.
same things we knew about 9/11.
Like they knew these guys were around in Florida and stuff like that. Like
They
a lot of
knew,
those
yeah.
Atta and all these guys were sketchy. I mean, it's the same old story, and there's a political. I mean, who benefited from it? Netanyahu and his Likudnik buddies. You know,
Yeah,
they got to go
yeah.
move right, and they had the Fuhrer, and they had all their friends here, their propagandists. Like
Oh yeah.
babies were being raped in ovens or whatever. You know, this.
We got the Patriot Act as a result of
Yeah,
that,
that's right.
and now we're Patriot Act exponential to an exponential number. Uh, these flock cameras everywhere and
Right.
uh, shared databases, ICE having all this Palantir, this Peter Thiel operation is like Big Brother on steroids.
On steroids and meth. Are you seeing flock cameras a lot often in Florida? Because I'm in California and they're everywhere.
Um, I haven't noticed.
Okay.
I'm in a fairly rural area, but I have read that they're springing up in Miami. Uh, I mean,
But the
uh,
layout is it's an extraordinary cost. Like they're everywhere. Like
yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
putting real money into this, and they're not. The camera doesn't really describe it because it's taking in data and analyzing the data. So it's like
Data,
you're in Philip K. Dick territory. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the late great Philip K. Dick. I mean, now they're talking about arresting people before they commit a crime. Well, that's right
Exactly.
out of Minority Report,
Sure
another
is.
Philip K. Dick novel. Of course, my favorite, and I have actually written I've written a novel. I've written two novels. The first novel I wrote is called Cafe Vaterland, which basically uh, Philip K. Dick wrote The Man in the High Castle, which was turned into a series, I think, by Apple TV or one of them. But uh, it was about the U.S. losing the war. That the Germans got the bomb before us and used it. We unconditionally surrendered. What I did, I took that same concept because I believe that Fred Trump, and I've got a lot of evidence. Fred Trump, Donald's father, was we know he was arrested at a Klan rally in 1927 in Queens, New York. That was not just a Klan rally. That was a huge protest where 1,000 Klansmen, including Fred Trump, who was berobed, according to one report, berobed in the attire of the KKK. 1,000 of these Klansmen descended on the Memorial Day parade in Queens to beat up cops because the cops they thought they've got two strikes against them. They're Irish and they're Catholic, and the Klan hated the Catholic, and they didn't really care for uh, foreigners. Um, Now that sounds a lot like January 6, 2021 to me, where Trump called these people in and they beat up the cops, Capitol Hill and Washington Metro Police. And but I wrote this Cafe Vaterland. I extended that theme to where I have it starting out at the World's Fair in Flushing Meadows in Queens. I have it starting out in 19 six. I think it's 67, and so the guy who becomes the Reichsmarshal for the Northeast is Fred Trump, and he's just recently announced the marriage of his son Donald, who's in the SS, to one of the daughters of uh, Joseph Goebbels, and then
Interesting.
the novel kind of springs forth from there. Um, uh, because I am firmly convinced that his father, after the Klan thing, he joined a group called the German American Bund.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
They had a huge rally, 22,000 people in Madison Square Garden in 1939. And a guy like Fred, who only, according to his own son, Donald said he only spoke German around the house.
Wow, I
Uh,
didn't know that.
yes, and his father, Frederick Trump. Frederick Trump was the guy that emigrated to the United States not to become a U.S. citizen. He did not like Americans. He went to the Pacific Northwest to make money with the gold rush. And he ran a bordello out there,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
um, and he made a lot of money in, running hotels and restaurants. By the time he gets back to New York, and then he tries to go back to Germany, where they had a warrant for his arrest because he was a draft dodger. Seems to run in the family. Um, he wanted his citizenship returned. They said, no, no, no. You avoided the draft, and they kicked him out. He was basically stateless. They sent him back to the United States, where he eventually got a U.S. passport. But he later became the uh, one of the managers of the McAlpin Hotel on Herald Square in Manhattan. That's not just any hotel. That was the world's largest hotel at the time. And here you got Frederick Trump, the grandfather, speaks German fluently. He wants to be a German. The only way he can try to convince the Kaiser that, look, I'm really a loyal German, please give me my citizenship back, is to get a job in a McAlpin Hotel where all the Allied conferences were taking place, where the Navy had a transceiver up on the roof of, where they would send messages to U.S. Navy ships and submarines. Um, and
There's also,
and here,
like, you would know this, these big hotels, there's a lot of secret trade that goes on in there.
oh
Like, I mean, the
yes,
Mayflower, I had lunch at the Mayflower
yeah,
once, and in
oh
that
yeah,
set, if you remember that center walkway, I just
yep.
watched the quote professionals unquote, just like I'm with my future wife. I'm like, wow, and they're not ugly women. They were like dressed to the
I
T.
know,
So
I
it's
know,
probably
I know. I I used to the manager of the bar there, which unfortunately they turned it into a like a shirt outfit or something. Uh, they closed the bar, but I knew the manager, the head bartender, and I used to just stop in there and pick up some intel. And that's what I did in Washington. Most of my stories came from cab drivers and bartenders who I always tipped well, even though I wasn't getting paid. Some months I didn't get paid at all because I was freelancing, but I always made sure I took care of the cabbies and the bartenders and waitresses too,
they
because
see
that's
it
how
all.
I got a lot of tips that way. And
I'm sure those women of the night give kickbacks to somebody at that hotel just to be around there. Like something. There
yeah,
was some
I
kind of
had,
secret trade.
and as you know, right across the Sales Street from the Mayflower is the ABC News Bureau.
Right. I mean, people don't understand how like dark it was. Like there was a time, I don't know if you remember the guy from Oregon, but he got kicked out. He was
Bob
I think
Packwood.
yeah, Packwood.
I knew. Yeah, I met Packwood. Yeah,
Okay,
for
well, but I'll tell you a funny story too. My wife worked for a congressman, and so they're like, "Hey," they saw me coming in. Can you deliver this over there? They didn't want to send any of the girls from the office over there, and I was like, "Okay, I'll walk over there. I don't
yeah,
care."
yeah.
And there's Packwood. He's like right at the door. Like when I
Oh
opened the
my God.
door, it was so weird because he's like, "Who's coming in?" And I was just like,
Yeah,
"Delivery from congressional so and so." But then he got arrested subsequently later. I think it was 97. But I was like, "Oh, now I get it." He was an
yeah, yeah.
octopus, man. He was really rough. Like
Yeah, I
he would
heard he
get
was
women and
very
just yeah,
handsy. Yeah, hands on.
super handsy. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that
And
stuff happens. This stuff happens all the time in
yeah,
DC. Somebody
um,
said like there was another guy I listened to. He said like 80% of the people in DC are blackmailed. I think that might be a lowball number. I think the whole
well,
place is operating. Yeah,
well, I. It's funny you mentioned getting blacklisted or blackmailed, and then blacklisted. Um, I had a funny story about Lindsey Graham. Uh, and look, everybody knew about him. Uh, I, you know, either somebody's got to be uh, absolutely um, on the inside, but if I just heard a rumor about somebody, I didn't run and say report it. Now, there's a lot of tabloids do exactly that. So I heard rumors about Lindsey Graham, including from journalists from South Carolina. Uh, but I was at a birthday party for Bob Schieffer at the National Press Club in the ballroom, and he actually played in his own country and western band, so he was actually entertaining at his own birthday party. And this thing, he had ordered this Texas beer Shiner Bock. He had ordered that in cases and cases, and the thing is, hey, nobody's going to take this beer home. We got to drink it all, so they kept the thing going. And a very drunk Lindsey Graham comes up to me, and I try to be nice to people, especially if they're members of the Congress, even though I don't agree with them. I said, "Well, how are you doing, Senator?" And he was so drunk. And all of a sudden he's moving towards me and he's starting to stare and he says, "Where are we going to go party?" And I said, "Oh, well, I don't know where you're going, Senator, but it's 2 in the morning and I'm going home." And that's when his assistant came up to him and said, "Senator, our car's here." And he
right.
gave me that kind of roll. It wasn't the first time he's done like he looks at me like,
Rolled his eyes like, "Oh,
yeah,
this is
roll,
what
yeah, here
happens."
we go
Yeah.
again. It was almost like you're at the National Press Club. He didn't know who I was actually, but I think he assumed I might have been a journalist. Um, and it was like, "You're not going to write about this, are you?" And you know what? I never did. I never did.
They're
Um,
starting to come out of the woodwork. Like there was a transsexual who had
oh
was
yeah,
with Lindsay. Like you can see him on YouTube. Like it's like, whoa,
yeah.
okay.
I
So
mean,
he is
later
notorious.
when it started, there was other information coming out. I kind of alluded to the incident at the press club, but it wasn't some headline story I was putting out. But oh, there's so many incidents like that. I remember good old Charlie Rangel. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
Congressman
the kind
Rangel
of
from.
light skinned African American guy. Yeah.
Yes, a good guy took over the seat that had once belonged to Adam Clayton Powell, who was used to wear these linen white suits. He was indicted. Uh, Nowadays, it seems like it was over nothing. Uh, but I was with a friend of mine, and we were standing in Statuary Hall. Between the Senate and House side, and we're talking to Charlie Rangel, and Charlie, had that gravelly voice,
That's right.
uh, and uh, so here comes Dennis Hastert when he was still the speaker with this young page, red-haired kid. They're about 16 years old, 16, 17, and it was like Hastert was talking to like one of his one of the whips or something. And, and then Charlie Rangel turns aside. He takes a look at Hastert with this page, and all he says was "Ha,"
He
and looked
probably
at me and
knew.
my
Yeah.
friend, and we heard about Hastert too, and it was like, well, it was like that. There he is again. Yeah, look how flagrant the guy is, and
Yeah. They just knew.
yeah.
People knew. He was a long time abuser too, for
Oh,
decades. Hastert was. Yeah.
going back to when he was a wrestling coach. By the way, he was fired from that wrestling coach job at his high school, and because of the stories about him, and what happens is one of the members of the Illinois legislature died, and they got Hastert to run for the seat. So here's a guy who's being accused of improper relations with his wrestling team, all underage. He runs for the legislature, wins, and then he runs for the U.S. House and wins, and becomes speaker. One of the longest serving speakers.
Under
Um,
Bush, the whole Bush administration, he was speaker, if I remember
and, and,
correctly.
and then I got to laugh. What is it with these wrestling coaches in high school? Because Jim Jordan from Ohio, he's
Right.
got the same allegations about him covering up similar activity at Ohio State University when he was the assistant wrestling coach. Uh, I'll be honest, we had to do that Greco-Roman wrestling in high school. I never cared for it. I thought it was eh, iffy, to say the least. Uh,
How
I
how
didn't.
serious do the Jim
Yeah.
Jordan allegations? Do you think that there's something there? Like I've heard the allegations,
Oh,
but
oh yeah. And let
oh,
me
you
tell
do.
you
Okay,
the
I don't know much
backstory.
about it.
The backstory on that. Um,
Because that's
so
Wexner, right? Isn't that Wexner
that
territory? Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
Wexner funded the sports medicine, the hospital. He funded all these things. He funded a lot of stuff at Ohio State because he lives nearby in New Albany, which is a gated community of billionaires. And Jeffrey Epstein lived there for a while
That's
when
right.
he was working hand in glove with
I think the
Wexner.
'90s, right? Going back to the '90s or
Yep,
something. Right?
yep. And
Yeah.
a lot of the girls, the victims, the trafficking victims, were in New Albany, staying either at the Epstein place or the Wexner place. Now the other thing is Wexner. We hear about the female victims, and there are many of them, probably well over maybe 1,000 to
Thousand.
fifteen
Yeah.
hundred of them. But we don't hear about the young, the boys. See, I heard from a very well-connected FBI source that Wexner's appetites were towards young males, and
There's
that
a rumor
actually
about him and
Epstein,
Epstein. Yeah,
Epstein,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. And then there's a weird thing about, Epstein never got a college degree, but he got hired to teach math and physics at the Dalton private school in Manhattan. And the guy that had a lot to do with hiring him without a degree was a guy named Donald Barr. And Donald Barr uh, is the father of William Barr, the first, Attorney
Attorney
General under
General.
Trump.
When
Yeah,
Epstein dies at the MCC,
yeah.
it's
And
incredible.
here's what's interesting about Donald Barr. He wrote a book. He
Got that
wrote a
book.
novel
Yeah, let's see if we can
called
get that up there.
Space Relations. I don't know.
Wow.
Oh, here
Yeah,
we
I
go.
got it right there. Perfect. That's
Space
perfect. Yeah.
Relations. It's a science fiction novel. Um, it's called A Slightly Gothic Interplanetary Tale. But what's in this book, they talk about. He writes about uh, um, intergalactic sex slave trade involving children.
Wow. I need to read that.
And other weird stuff like you're reading here about how people would get sexual gratification from taking uh, colonic enemas.
Wow. So like
Yeah.
pegging or something like that. The uh the interesting thing is that William Barr, like there's guys who were in there. There were two mob guys. I've gone over this on a show, but there are two mob guys who were in the MCC. One is Francisi, both Italian last names, Francisi and
Yeah.
Elite. And they say that William Barr's lying about what happened at the MCC publicly.
Oh,
Because
oh yeah. There was I think Epstein was. I
he was murdered.
think he
I think
was.
he was murdered.
He
Yeah.
was, and it was by a guy who was in there charged with a quadruple homicide.
Yeah,
A guy who's
Tartaglione. Another
Tartaglione, right?
Italian, yeah.
Yeah, a cop going bad, by the way. And they said because he was an ex-cop, he got a lot of favors done in the Metropolitan Correction Center. Because cops, prison
He might
guards,
have done some other work too. You just don't
I
have
think
any
so.
idea. He also had his trial delayed all the way up until 2 years ago. So I
Yeah,
think he was arrested. Like it was not a speedy trial. And there's
that's right.
like the testament that came. I don't know if you've read the stuff that came out of the Epstein files, but like
Oh,
he's like berating Epstein, calling him a pedophile, like, and Epstein's afraid. And then somebody comes out from outside of the jail, and Epstein's like, "I'm
yeah,
afraid they're trying to kill me." He literally
yeah,
tells somebody that. So
yeah, yeah. And yeah, Donald Trump. uh, Um, oh, the other thing I want to mention about
who
Donald
benefits?
Barr.
Donald Trump benefited by Epstein not being
Yeah,
around. By the way,
Donald
a lot of
Barr
people did.
worked. He worked for the OSS during World War II.
That's
Donald
right.
Barr.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and
Interesting cast of characters. And I mean, William Barr is a known CIA agent. Like he literally was an agent. I don't think you ever
he was.
quite leave that. You know.
He did. He worked for the CIA. He's also fluent in Mandarin Chinese.
Interesting.
And back when George H.W. Bush was, this is back in the 70s, he was the U.S. kind of liaison officer in Beijing. We hadn't we hadn't established full relations then with China, and H.W. Bush had a girlfriend named Jennifer Fitzgerald, and
I remember that.
and um, the Chinese take a dim view of PDA, public display of affections. Well, apparently H.W. Bush had his girlfriend over there. I don't know where Barbara was. Maybe she was back in the States. But they were seen um, having some sort of interlude at a public park in
Yeah.
Beijing
Hmm.
by Chinese security
Intel,
police,
yeah.
and it was William Barr who was dispatched over there to settle everything, make sure Chinese weren't going to talk about it. Of course, it was a dictatorship. He, I would imagine he had to do some favors too for the Chinese authorities, and that later was confirmed by somebody who was very, very high up in the Republican Party back
Interesting.
when H.W. Bush was president. I mean,
It just
somebody
shows
this
all the
came,
shenanigans.
yeah, this came from a source who was all frequently at the bar of the Capitol Hill Club, right
Wow. See,
near where
this
he,
is the stuff you find out being in DC.
yeah.
And also, I mean, I remember the stories about Junior with
Oh,
Ash and also the guy from Talent News. Remember the
oh
guy from
yeah,
Talent News? I forgot his name, the bald.
yeah.
They
Oh,
did. I think it was Wrangle. Actually, it's interesting you brought
are
up
you
Wrangle
talking? You're oh, wait a minute. Are you talking
because
about?
Wrangle was the one who got the info, the exit and entree stuff from the White House, showing that that dude from
Yeah,
Talon was going into the White House like 30 or 40 times. Do you remember that?
I'm trying to think of his name now. I know him. I've
Uh,
met him at the press
Gucker,
club on.
Gusker, Gusker,
Well,
Gucker.
that's his actual name, but he
Oh,
went by another name, and he
oh,
was a male prostitute.
right. He was. That's another thing of this prostitution stuff. And
Oh
then there
yeah,
you see him asking Bush questions in the freaking
his name
press box, press
his
booth.
name
Yeah,
his name Jeff Gannon.
Gannon. That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to wrap this. It's great to talk with you, Wayne.
Oh yeah, we
Uh,
could go on forever. I know
yeah,
it's
I mean, there's so much. This just shows the kind of underbelly of our current fascist system. It's there's a lot of really seedy stuff and blackmail surrounding. Everybody knows all this stuff on everybody else. But I'd love to have you back on to talk about your most recent book, which is a
yeah.
parade of new sovereignties, a
Yeah,
post-hegemonic
there's
world.
80 there's at least 85 captive nations in what so-called Russian Federation, which is neither Russian nor Federation. When Putin is ousted, and I think we're getting close to it, we're going to have 85 nations asking for recognition that, in other words, Russia is one of the last empires on the face of this planet. And and theirs is land-based. We think of colonial empires as like Britain and France. It's a land-based colonial empire, but 85 nations ready to
To
um,
break it up. If it breaks up, that'll be really extraordinary. Um,
break it up, and many of these will want to join NATO.
wow. Yeah, we're really at a completely tectonic like shift in all of the
Oh yeah,
relationships going on.
yeah.
It's really something else. And a lot of people don't really see what's going to happen. Like after these wars, if and when they end, these are going to be very different countries, Iran and Russia, and their sensibilities. I don't think they're going to take their toys and
Iran
go
could,
home, so to speak.
yeah, Iran could break up too eventually. Um,
I think
only
that's
about
the goal. Yeah.
60% is actually Persian, but you've got Arab, you got Baluchi, you've got Turkmen, you got Azerbaijanis, you got Kurds, and and then other smaller groups. Because remember, it was once a empire. It was the Persian Empire. Um, so I see, and China a little bit further down the road. Uh, Again, there's not. I think about 60% of China is their ethnic Han Chinese, but a lot of other not. They don't even speak Mandarin. I think the world, and then you look at this country and what Trump is doing to the blue states. Uh, if you don't you don't agree with me, I'm going to cut off assistance, FEMA, everything else. I really see a chance that California may decide this is enough, and
I wouldn't be
uh,
surprised.
yeah.
It feels like a weird country here now. It's changed a lot since I've been here. I've grown up here for 50 years, so
Oh,
really is
okay. Yeah,
much, much different. Yeah.
I used to work for a company. I spent time in El Segundo. It
That's
was
where I live. I'm
computer
sitting in El
science.
Segundo right now.
I saw that. I worked for Computer Sciences Corporation. Had their headquarters right there in
What
El
was their
Segundo.
address? Do you remember?
Uh,
What
uh,
street were they on? It's on that.
Sepulveda,
Yeah, it's
Sepulveda Boulevard, I think it was.
yeah.
I
So
think it was right off
those
of
two big
Sepulveda.
buildings or whatever were they the two
Yep,
big tall
right near the
buildings?
airport, right across from
Yeah.
where the airport runway is.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
I know exactly where those are. Yeah. Small world, but anyway, Wayne Madsen. We kind of talked about overthrowing a fascist regime, but we just kind of talked like we had a similar knowledge base.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it all has to do with overthrowing the regime. Whatever, and there always seems to be a fascist regime, except they changed the name of the guy at the top.
well said. It's still the same. We got the same person under Trump. We didn't get any change. And you weren't. I mean, people call you a liberal, but I don't think you were pretty light on Obama. If you're
No,
supposedly a liberal, like
I wrote a book, Manufacturing of a President. I talk about how his mother was not a Peace Corps hippie. She was working with the CIA in the overthrow of Sukarno in Indonesia.
Right.
So she
And that
was
was
far
really
from it.
bloody, wasn't it? Like Sukarno
Yeah.
Suharto. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and his father, the from Kenya, he was in Hawaii as part of a CIA funded program to get as many African students educated to send them back to be pro-Western leaders because the Soviets had something called Patrice Lumumba University. They got there first. Uh, Barack Obama Sr. was our answer to the Patrice Lumumba University and
Fascinating.
uh, and so the whole family was tied up in the intelligence world.
It's
Oh,
incredible. The real story of Obama's off the charts. Anyway, thanks for your time. Where can people
you
find
bet.
your work at Substack now, right?
Wayne Madsen. All I got to do is look for it on Substack, and there it all is.
Substack, all there. And formerly of the Wayne Madsen report.com. That's where it was before. But
Yes,
yeah. And again, the most recent book I'll have you back to talk about is A Parade of New Sovereignties, a post-hegemonic world. Check it out. And again, it's Wayne Madsen. Thanks so much for your time.
absolutely.